Okay, so I've had a lot of comments on the last post I made, just into a reference of what I'm actually talking about, so I'll get into that a little bit, and I'm in the pickup line to get my kid, so it'll save me some time and boredom. Alright, so what I know and what I've heard and just what I've seen is that the GOV is trying to say that birthright citizenships of Native Americans isn't a real thing. That we were not here, and so it's not alright just to be a citizen of America, because, pause, now I'm hearing, because we actually came from Siberia and we weren't always here. So that's what I'm getting at, is that there's a lot of different places I've heard, and right now up north people's reservations are getting split in half and some are being sent to Canada. How is that possible? I don't really know. Also, I'm from Oklahoma. My tribe's here, you know. If they give me the option of deporting me and tell me, you know, you pick where you want to go, I should do that, because this is all I've ever known. This is all my family's ever known. This is where we're from. So I'm just giving the backstory of what that was about. The Siberia thing, I don't know. I'm just reading comments, and this is what everyone's saying is, we weren't from here. We're not the first ones here. Okay, I wasn't here years and years and years ago, so I can't really tell you, but from, I don't know, just history in itself, I don't know where the hell we're all going to go. There's reservations all over this country. There's a lot of Native Americans everywhere. So if you're going to kick us all out, I don't know. And then I heard someone saying, well, don't go to Europe. If you get deported, don't go to Europe or something, because I don't even care to go to Europe. Shit, I'd go to, like, I don't know, somewhere fun. But anyways, that's what the backstory is on all this. I don't really have a firm understanding of whatever it is. I don't even like politics. It just cracked me up because they said I was going to get deported to Siberia, and that's hysterical to me. But so be it. I mean, turn up in Siberia, I guess. You know, all my natives are just going to meet me there. We're going to have a big old party in 49, you know. That's probably what we're going to do. Anyways, I hope that helps on some of the comments and confusion, because I'm just as confused. Shit, I don't know. But let me go get my kid, and I'll talk to y'all later. Hopefully figure this craziness out of what's going on in our country. But till then, see you next time.
Dear Native Americans, I am your very, very distant relative from Siberia. Because about 20,000 years ago, few of Siberian tribes migrated through Bering Strait right to Americas, both continents. And as you can see, studies have proved that we do share specific genetic markers like Y chromosome haplogroups Q and mtDNA haplogroups like X that are found in both Siberian population and Native American groups. This is a photo of the Buryat Siberian tribe. And this photo is from one of the Native American tribes. And as you can see, we actually do look quite similar. Not only that, we do share some cultural similarities. This is a shaman from Siberian tribe. And this one is a chief of one of the tribes in Native America. I'm not sure that this is a shaman. I'm pretty sure it's a warrior. But the outfits look similar. So after the last video about Siberian people, I just decided to make one about Buryat people. As of 2021, the population is considered to be about 600,000 to 700,000 people, according to different sources. Majority of them live in Buryat Republic in Russia, Irkutsk region, and Zabaikalsky region. We lived a nomadic lifestyle for hundreds and hundreds of years. As most of the nomads, we lived in yurtas, and we still do have them around, but mostly for touristic reasons. Another fun fact is that majority of Asians are lactose intolerant, but we are not. Milk and dairy products still do take quite a huge space in our diet. We also do celebrate our own Lunar New Year, which is a bit different from Chinese or Korean Lunar New Year.
Could Central Asians and the indigenous peoples be related to each other? Just hear me out. It wouldn't be so far-fetched because both groups of people originally hailed from Siberia. Central Asians just migrated east while the indigenous peoples migrated west to the Americas. The Turkic peoples of Central Asia are especially similar. For example, when comparing the Siberian Yakuts to the indigenous peoples, I see a lot of similarities in language, cultural clothing and jewelry, and even musical instruments. However, with other Central Asians, there is a big difference due to third-party cultural influence. But seeing how similar the teepee and the yurt are, how the tribes exist with both people's cultures, specifically Turkmen culture, how the indigenous peoples believe in spirituality, very similar to shamanistic practices in early Turkic history, I tend to believe otherwise. I think we're actually really similar with roots that are closely tied.
Sweet Louisiana, robbing on This is the Republic of Sakha, also known as Yakutia. Its vast area constitutes 20% of the total territory of Russia and is equivalent to the combined size of 10 Italys, or even the entire country of India. However, in contrast to India's massive population of over 1.5 billion people, Yakutia has a mere population of less than 1 million individuals. Among them, the Yukagirs number 1800s, Dolgans 9000s, Evenks 80,000s, and finally the Sakha people, who constitute the largest group with 500,000 members. Despite the relatively small numbers, all the different ethnic groups inhabiting Yakutia possess unique and remarkable national identities.
Did you know that some Native American languages are related to languages in the Old World? Even though these languages have been separated for about 10,000 years and haven't been written down until relatively recently, linguists have been able to reconstruct this connection. Navajo-related languages in North America are related to Siberian languages like the Yeniseian language family. This is one of the first linguistic connections between the Old World and the New World that a lot of linguists have been on board with. There's just so many similarities between these languages that it's easy to see how at one point this was one language and some people went to North America and some people stayed in Siberia. There's even more recent genetic evidence to support this.
Como Umka, como Chukotka, Vidgaurakan Chukotka, como Kamituarkan, Raev, Kamituarkan Memel, and Rirke, and Korame.
Matoku yapi, Pentote, Chantawastea, Napechi user be don't got the kind of Makana, Pejaka, Makiapi. Took it, yeah. Shicha. What's called Kotka? Mia? Ushni. Mi Wamaduka Ushni, was they what Agashni.
Country of the world that we will pray for the rest of our lives. And so I picked Mongolia. I'm Native American. A lot of folk may not know that we descend from Mongolians who came across the land bridge between Russia and Alaska. And I thought, well, I'm going to pray for Mongolia.
I don't care what preacher, I don't care what medicine man, shaman, we're humans. And the best teacher to wake you up is Mother Earth. The best teacher is the water, the trees, the wind. It's as simple as going to a river, an ocean, and putting your hands in there. It's as simple as that. And then those who are in a forest like this is actually touching a mother tree. And what happens inside you, it triggers. It triggers the spiritual awakening that has been covered, has been fought to be taken out of you. Because once you turn up the volume, and from what colonization has done, then you hear, and you hear the spirits. Don't forget that, because it was everywhere, not just here among Native people. It was everywhere.
We express ourselves to connect with nature, and a lot of landscapes, a lot of beautiful expression of the nature goes through our body and becomes as a sound, and we share it with nature. So it's a full circulation. It helps you to fall into trance when you call your spirit animals. Saka culture is very rich, and the basic belief is shamanism. Shamanism is actually even not a belief or religion. It's a style of life. As a phenomenon, it was born when the first men in this planet Earth realized that everything is interconnected. Human being, nature, and the entire cosmos. So one of the major singing technique in my culture is kalahach, and that connects our three worlds in a body. Lower, which is related to fear, kuttal; middle world, which is taptal, related to love; and upper world, which is gratitude, machtal. And all of these three worlds remain in balance through singing kalahach. And kalahach, it's like a yodel. There's a fundamental sound as coming from voice, like a chest sound, right? Like, and on top of that, I add this yodel-ish sound that comes actually from diaphragm. So it has some, almost like a beat while you're singing. We believe that in our hair we store wisdom of our ancestors. So I really wanted to connect with the ancestors of that banyan tree, with my ancestors. And I started to sing, and I felt that an intimate connection with nature.
When I was a young boy, I'd asked my elders about why is it we have long hair as indigenous men. And they told me, they say, grandson, when you get up in the morning and you get your hair ready, they said you can't do so when you're in a rush. You cannot do so when you're angry. You cannot do so when you're frustrated. You brush your hair too fast, you might break it. If you don't take care of it at all, you will spend the rest of your day wiping it from your face as it reminds you. As a man, as an indigenous man, the greatest gift that you need to have is patience, is love, is compassion, and is gentleness with how you treat yourself. And in turn, it will transfer into how you treat others. It is an extension of your spirit, of your senses. As you walk this road of life, you will feel the changing winds, and you will never lose your way. You cannot cut this off, and you cannot numb yourself to this. When you braid your hair, the 3 strands that you use will represent the 7 generations that are to come, the 7 generations that you are, and the 7 generations that came before. And only when you tie all 3 together will you be able to be strong. Will you be able to be beautiful? Will you be able to be practical and balanced as you walk this everyday walk of life? Remember this, and know that your hair is the greatest gift that the Creator could have ever given you.
Can I get to the yams? Sweet yams. Show me the way, 'cause I got bills to pay.
Everybody, just I want you to pair up on this slide. And who's Native American? Just pair up with someone sitting next to you. It's not a trick question, by the way. Only one. What'd you say?
I said B.
B? You said B? What'd you say? C? Yeah? Did you say B? C? You said C? Damn, dude.
I can't really see A that well, but I guess from the other ones, I'd say B.
You'd say B? Okay, well, the answer is A, by the way. The others, did anybody say A? All right, good. So the others are Siberian, so we're going to come to this. All right, let's do the next one. Which one's of Native American ancestry and which one is of Han Chinese ancestry? And the Han ethnic group is the dominant ethnic group in China.
I'm going to say that the one on the right is the Han Chinese ancestry, but I'm not too sure.
The one on the right is Han. What do you say, bro? What did you come to?
Left Native American.
Left Native American?
Right.
Is that what you say? The right is Chinese? Yeah? What's that? The top one is Native American? Okay, so listen. Yeah, it's a real subtle difference, right? Is that what you said?
The top one is Chinese.
Top one is Chinese?
Yes.
Dude, killing it. All right, but you're wrong. The top one is Native American. So, all right, go to the next slide. Okay. Asian or European? European or American, bro?
European.
European?
Yeah.
Dude, European or American?
American?
European?
You mean Asian?
I mean, European or Asian?
Asian.
Yeah? Dude, what do you got? Come on, man. The two of you got to have it down. What do you say?
I think he's Asian.
You think he's Asian?
I have no idea.
Yeah? Bro?
I think he's European.
Think he's European? Bro, how about you?
It's definitely European.
Yeah? All right, so here's the deal. You ready? Can you go back to the map? Let me show you something. So, no, the map, the one I think it's like slide 3 or something maybe? Yeah, slide 3. Yeah, okay, so here. Check this out. So here's the map of human migration patterns. So notice how coming out of Asia here and out of China and northern China, so the Mongolia up around here, so people migrate this way, okay? We're getting new evidence, by the way, of the migration pattern that people actually came across the channels. It's quite fascinating. Stuff is changing a lot, but here's the idea. Genes come this way. Well, how do genes change? The people that stop here and the people that go here, they're the same. They're not any different genetically speaking. As you start to come down this way, you start to see very different things. But indigenous peoples of the Americas, right, look a lot like people in this area of the world. But notice, right, how it comes this way. But so Siberian, and three of those slides are from, those photos are people right here, and one is people right here. So one is American, got it? One is Asian but it's really kind of European because they're Russian, because Mongolia and Siberia is part of Russia, and they're really Siberian. And Russia is a European country, and so you could argue that all those folks are European because they're Russian. Got it? You see how, like, the complexity of this? So, but what are they really? And how are they any different? Their DNA is exactly the same. And then we come down here and we have this Native American woman here from this area who looks a lot like somebody from over here that you couldn't really tell the difference because the genes just followed. So I remember I spent a lot of time, I lived in Ecuador for quite a while. I was doing my doctoral research there, and I would spend time in the mountains. I studied this one particular region. It's a province called Azuay in the south central part of Ecuador. And I was going into communities where they had never seen white people in some of the communities. They were indigenous communities, and it was like, except priests who were of European ancestry, but they never had visitors, right? And this is actually a true story. So I spent a lot of time with priests and nuns and, a whole bunch. Learned a lot about the Catholic Church, that a lot of times Catholics don't want to know a lot of things that you learn from the inside, but it's all good. And I would go into these communities. Now the priests the Catholicism had sort of conquered them, right? And imposed Christianity on them, the indigenous peoples. And they would show all the images of Jesus. And the images of Jesus are of a white guy with long hair and a beard. And I had long hair and I had a beard at the time. And so I imagine the priests for generations and generations have been saying, Jesucristo está viniendo otra vez. So Jesus is coming again. Jesus is coming. He's coming. He's coming. And in comes this guy on a horseback with the priests with long brown hair and a beard, and people going up to the priest and saying, Padrecito, ¿está él? ¿Es él? It's him? Is that him? Is that Jesus? Like, it's really quite a power trip on my part to have people coming down and bowing at my feet and so on. But that's neither here nor there. But I would be in communities sometimes where I really thought I was in Central Asia, like in the middle of China, because the features, maybe sitting in candlelight or something, and the features of people were exactly the same. I really didn't know. I thought I had been transported. Anyway, the other guy is from Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan is right here. The guy, is he Asian or is he European? And he is Kazakh. So if you know, is anybody Kazakh in here by chance? Anybody? A couple semesters ago, I had someone who is Kazakh. So he is both European and Asian in a way, but he's really European. Kazakhstan is considered to be a European country, so he's European, but he looks Asian.
Before they went and covered it up, do you know what 23andMe said I was back in 2016? 100% Native American. So I love this. Y'all can keep writing me think pieces, but y'all can't cover up your tracks quick enough. You came from the Cybers came from us. No one's denying that you have your own culture. We're just telling you where it came from. This is hard. This is very hard for many people who have been eating the lies, drinking the Kool-Aid for decades. But if you want to know why all this shit is happening right now, then you need to go back. You need to stop lying to yourselves.
I got my DNA test back today. And it says I'm most notably connected, or my DNA is most notably connected to Chief Pontiac of the Ottawa Indians, or Native Americans. That blew my mind. And I was born in Korea, lived on the streets of South Korea, but there's not much Korean in me. How is that even possible? So, I'm a Korean from Korea that's not Korean, that's most notably connected to Chief Pontiac. How is that even possible? Someone explain this.
Mongolia is in what is now known as China. The Manchus created what is now known as Mandarin. You can bitch and moan all you want, but keep proving my points. Thanks.
Yeah, same, but different, but still same.
Let's talk about how the American government displaced tens of thousands of Native Americans between 1830 and 1850, or as historians like to call it, the Trail of Tears. In the earliest days of the United States, George Washington and his peoples were on a record of being very resentful and hatred towards the Native Americans. They felt like the Native Americans were animals and aliens who were encroaching on their land and were getting in the way of the money that could be made by way of cotton picking and chattel slavery. The white folk thought that the only way that the Native Americans could succeed in America was if they were to be converted to white men, converted to Christianity, landowning, slave owning, things of that nature. Fast forward to 1830, and this glorious piece of filth, Andrew Jackson, was the president of the United States, and he's held these exact same sentiments that were held by Washington and his peoples 50 years prior. The issue was that hundreds of thousands of Native Americans lived in land east of the Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, etc. This is what folk refer to as the Cotton Kingdom. So in 1830, Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, which gave the federal government the power to exchange native-held land in the Cotton Kingdom east of the Mississippi for land in the west in the Indian Colonization Zone. Yeah, that's really what they called it. The plan was to move which was over 100,000 Native Americans in the southeastern states to the Indian Territory, which we know as modern-day Oklahoma. They wanted to squeeze all of those people into one piece of territory. And that's where we get the phrase, the Trail of Tears. This was the pathway of thousands of miles that would stretch from the southeastern states to the western territories. During these treks, thousands and thousands of Native Americans unfortunately lost their lives to disease, starvation, things of that nature. The federal government did promise that this land in the western territory would forever go untouched. They wouldn't be bothered, but manifest destiny reared its ugly head, and in 1907, Oklahoma became a state, and the Indian Territory was gone forever. Teddy Roosevelt was a supervillain. I say that confidently and openly. He was a racist, a eugenicist, a raging ethnic cleanser. And whenever I say these things, I get pushed back like this. I don't think a supervillain would have created the national park systems or busted the trusts. Teddy Roosevelt is known as the conservation president. He believed in shielding wildlife and lands from development. He established 150 national forests, 51 federal bird reserves, 4 national game preserves, 5 national parks, and 18 national monuments. Pretty cool, but where did he get all that land from? Finish the sentence! In the 1800s, the Native Americans had their land taken from them and were abused by the United States government at great length. And Teddy Roosevelt picked up right where the 1800s left off. His national park system was responsible for taking over 86 million acres of indigenous land from the Native Americans. Oh, this was just a coincidence. No, Teddy Roosevelt hated the Native Americans and would tell you that he hated the Native Americans at any opportunity. This was a quote from an 1886 speech, almost 20 years before he established any national parks. So yeah, he gave us cute trees and national parks, but at what cost? And I think it's a travesty and diabolical irony that Teddy Roosevelt is one of the 4 faces on Mount Rushmore, given where Mount Rushmore stands.
You've almost certainly seen some of these images before. At the turn of the 20th century, Edward S. Curtis walked away from his comfortable position as a portrait photographer to go on the road for decades, completing his project, The North American Indian. He spent years among North American tribes, with a sympathetic eye on their life and culture, becoming an amateur ethnographer in addition to becoming an extensive documenter of their life with his camera. There can be no doubt that Edward S. Curtis was a brilliant photographer, and that these are excellent historical documents. But the question remains, what exactly are these documents of? For example, was Curtis overly romanticizing and intentionally curating a picture of Native Americans that deliberately left out elements of modern life in order to reinforce a primitivist view of Indians that white Americans wanted to see? Or do we take Curtis at his word, just as a person who wanted to open a shutter on Native American life in all of its dazzling, complex diversity at a time when it was rapidly changing? Curtis was pushing in a different direction than the rest of American society at a time when government policies were actively seizing Native American land and working to help erase their culture. Having recently read Timothy Egan's book, Short Nights of the Shadowcatcher, I basically have two takeaways about Edward S. Curtis. One is that this project essentially ruined his life. It ran him down, it estranged him from his family. And second of all, we just have to be glad that his work exists. It left excellent documentation of a world that has changed dramatically. Let me know what you think.
When you Google Native American photos and realize what you're looking at is a lie.
Did you know that in 1952, Father John Poland was selling Native American children for $10? Let's pause and read this letter. Yes, it's real. In 1946, Dennis Seeley was a baby. He was forcibly removed from his babysitter's arms and put in the papoose house at the mission. When his mom tried to visit and see what had happened, she was put in jail for a week. In 1952, Dennis, who was 5, was put on a bus for an 18-hour, 700-mile trip. He had this sign around his neck and a bag of food. Pause and read. He was part of the American Indian boarding schools. The schools were started by Richard Pratt in 1879 with the mission of kill the Indian, save the man. It boggles the mind.
Oh, wow. Ой, нет, не вау.
PSA, people from this part of Russia are not white. Too long have I seen people completely erase the existence of North Asians, saying stuff like, oh, not everyone from Asia is Asian because Russia's in Asia. Correction, Russia colonized North Asia, but the indigenous people of North Asia are very much Asian. North Asia is home to thousands of different ethnic groups with their own languages, cultures, and histories. Yet just like West and Central Asians, they're never included in any Asian organizations. Or if they rarely are, they're homogenized. Even though North Asians face extremely high rates of racial discrimination in Russia and around the world. So we need to stop acting like Russia didn't colonize North Asia and start talking about the indigenous people of North Asia.
No, I know a lot of people don't speak upon this. I'm just going to say it. Native Americans came from Asia.
Incorrect. But are we really surprised? I mean, everybody's trying to be Native American nowadays. So let me educate you. The ancestors of Native Americans originated with the Asian populations. However, they diverged from the Asian population at least 25,000 years ago, per DNA evidence. And then, those populations migrated further out of Siberia onto Beringia, and they lived in this whole area for right about 12,500 years. Before officially entering North America, because there was some icy ice in the way. And that was just the first migration that went all the way down North America, all the way down South America to the very tip. And how dare you group all Native Americans together? But then one day we were draining some wetlands in Florida, which we do and we shouldn't, and we found all of these bog burials. And we thought it was the Clovis culture, which had been there. They evolved from what we were just talking about. And they just thought it was the Clovis culture until they started excavating it, and they started finding artifacts. And then one day somebody was looking at these artifacts, particularly the stone blades, and they were like, wait, I don't think this rock exists here. Where is it from? So he got his geology friend, and his geology friend said, oh, there's only 2 places on Earth where you can access that rock, Spain and France. Oh my God, are you saying that mariners for Europe were America's first inhabitants? It cannot be true. Hold your horses, Karen. White people didn't exist yet. Psst. Ooh, burn, you lost. And so the combination of these people and these people But that particular mixture seems to stay more in North America. And this is why Native Americans up north look more like this, and down South America look more like this. And that is why you should educate yourself before spouting such rubbish on the internet. Native Americans, no matter which type, were literally made here. Have a good day. Resources!
Won't speak upon this. I'm just gonna say it. Native Americans came from Asia.
That doesn't make them Asian.
Definitely not picking on this commenter, because there have been a lot of comments like this on that video, but this is the one that came across my box when I was ready to respond. So, ancestry and DNA do not determine race. Race is a social construct that depends on more than genetics and phenotype. It has to do with culture and history and so on. So even if it is true that Native Americans came from Asia at some point, however many tens of thousands of years ago or longer, that doesn't make them Asian. And what I also find interesting is a lot of people in the comment section are saying, well, race is a social construct and it doesn't matter because we're all connected and all humans are the same. And what I find interesting about that is that people are willing to say that race doesn't matter where it comes to a group of people facing cultural erasure and ongoing genocide, knowing full well that race does matter and that we don't treat each other as connected and the same. It'd be nice if we did. If we did, we would be respecting the sovereignty of Native Americans, but we don't. So even if I take race out of it, the bottom line is that we need to respect the cultural identities of people. And this is like, and it's really important where that message is like coming from an East Asian, because what we're seeing in America is that the East Asian narrative of Asian American culture on the whole is dominant, and that's leading to the erasure of South Asians and Southeast Asians. So yeah, like, the bottom line is we need to respect the cultural identities that people have, and especially where it comes to a group of people who are facing cultural erasure and ongoing genocide.
Do you know what the difference between race and ethnicity is? It's okay if you don't. That's sort of why I'm here. I like to explain things. And sometimes those explanations are successful. To put it simply, race is a system that was created back in the days when much of the world was being divided up into different colonies and Europeans were being exposed to these new, different looking people. This system was essentially developed to categorize and rank human differences. These differences are mostly to do with physical appearance, skin tone, hair texture, skeletal structure. But at the same time, these differences are mostly limited to physical appearance and aren't taking into consideration biological similarities or differences. To simplify this, the idea of race divides humanity based on their physical appearance. I guess it's also important to note that it also implies that the white or Caucasian race is the default, and every other race, the differences between them, it's all in proximity to the Caucasian. This part surprises a lot of people. The idea of race isn't consistent worldwide, nor has it been consistent throughout time. A good example of this are the East Africans. Today, perhaps if you're in America, you'd know that the East African populations are considered part of the Black or African race. But there were points in history where Europeans classified them as a subgroup of Caucasian. Ethnicity, on the other hand, is completely different. It's a group of people that share language, culture, and usually, but not always, descent, a common place of descent. Now, personally, I believe that the strongest aspect of ethnicity is language. I think this made sense.
Tribal sovereignty. It's a phrase you've likely heard before, but what does it really mean? Sovereignty is the natural right of a people to govern themselves. Sovereignty means that tribes operate as independent nations within a nation. And did you know that there are 574 federally recognized Native nations in the United States? All of these tribes have their own constitutions, laws, elections, and infrastructure designed to meet their people's needs. Their rights, lands, assets, and resources are their own. This is similar to how the United States government exercises sovereignty on behalf of its citizens. Tribal nations have been sovereign since time immemorial. Sovereignty is not granted, but rather it is recognized. The federal government recognizes tribe sovereignty through treaties. In order to make a treaty, two sovereign nations must come together, recognize each other's right to govern their own people, and create an agreement. With or without the United States, tribal nations are sovereign. But if you need more proof, the United States Constitution, in addition to hundreds of treaties and Supreme Court cases, has repeatedly affirmed tribes' right to govern themselves. Remember, tribal nations have always been and will always be sovereign. Treaties are the supreme law of the land. The United States government's frequent violations of its treaty obligations do not change that. Now that we understand what sovereignty is, why is sovereignty important? Sovereignty matters because sovereign nations know best what their people need. Tribal governments make vital decisions for their people related to healthcare, education, and economic development, among others. When Native nations make their own decisions, they are more likely to thrive. Strong, sovereign tribal governments foster strong tribal economies and nations. We honor and affirm tribal sovereignty. To learn more about why sovereignty matters, visit nativegov.org or treatiesmatter.org.
What stings the most is the feeling of being stripped of her identity.
It's a direct attack on who I am. Technically, on paper, I'm not Native.
Santana Rabang and her grandfather, Robert Rabang, were also disenrolled. Santana now lives in Lumi, the tribe where her mother is from. But she's not a member of Lumi either because she doesn't meet blood quantum requirements there. Blood quantum was imposed by the U.S. government in the early 1900s as a means to define and limit citizenship within Indian tribes. It's still being used today to measure the amount of tribal blood in a person's ancestry.
Blood quantum isn't how we identify as Indigenous. It's my connection to the land and the knowledge that I carry. It's not the amount of blood that I have in me. It's the fact that it's there and lives through me is all that matters to me. But I'm not enrolled anywhere.
This neighborhood is where Santana grew up learning Nooksack traditions.
Hello, my grandchildren.
And since Robert is no longer considered Nooksack, he's also facing eviction. He's fighting to stay to preserve his mother's legacy, the woman who was known for weaving baskets out of cedar.
It's been really stressful. It just hurts.
Chapters unfolding within a Western Washington tribe. Dozens of members have been told soon they will no longer belong.
For many, it's not just a loss of benefits, but a loss of identity, family, and history. King 5's Facing Race reporter Sharon Yu shows us how the move is tearing the community apart. Sharon.
Jessica Joyce, some Squaxin Island tribal members got a letter summoning them to a hearing to prove they had the documents to show they really are Squaxin. If they couldn't, they were out, and unfortunately many didn't have the documents or their documents did not match the one in the official records.
This is a different letter that came from my great-grandmother.
Sally Brownfield's home in Shelton proudly displays her roots.
This was my great-grandmother, Mary Frances Smith.
Family pictures on the wall show where she came from, and tribal decorations show who she is.
I go by my great-grandmother's name, Saspolitza.
A proud Squaxin Island tribal member.
Well, I was told by the old people that it meant like weaving.
But now, with a single letter, her tribe erased her identity. Is there your name on there?
Yeah, my name is...
She had 30 days to prove.
Right here.
She's a descendant of people listed in the tribal rolls and is at least 1/8 Squaxin. Sally was told she was not.
Have you been able to gather the documents to try and re-enroll and try and prove that you belong to this tribe?
We have the documents, yes.
And it proves that you are Nooksack?
In our eyes, yeah.
Did you ever think that you would have to do all of this just to...
No, not at all. When your grandparents say, you're from a certain area, this is who you are, this is where you belong, you believe them. And having to find documents to prove that, it's kind of demeaning.
The one drop rule, meaning that, one drop of black blood makes you black, that was to keep as many people oppressed or, legitimize their oppression as possible. But on the other side, one drop of anything else completely dilutes you as a Native person. So if you're a Native person, you have a 1 drop of something else, then suddenly you're less Native. So it's the opposite.
Traditionally, within Apache society, you go by the mother. And if the mother's recognized as Apache, she has her clan, the children are unquestionably Apache. Not in the American context, not when patriarchy trumps matriarchy. So what does that mean? My sisters are short 1/16 of a degree. What does that mean? Does that mean their pinkies aren't Apache? What does that mean?
Have you ever heard of a $5 Indian? This intriguing term originates from the implementation of the Dawes Act in 1887, an attempt by the U.S. government to assimilate Native Americans by transitioning their communal land into individual allotments. As part of this process, the government created the Dawes Rolls to list eligible Native Americans. However, this system was soon exploited by opportunistic settlers. These individuals would pay government agents, sometimes as little as $5, to falsely register them as Native Americans. This fraudulent act granted them access to land and other benefits that were intended for genuine Native Americans, leading to substantial losses in land and heritage for many tribes. Over time, the repercussions of these actions led to severe cultural and economic impacts on Native American communities, issues that echo into contemporary discussions on rights and identity. The term $5 Indian has since become a symbol of this exploitation and the complex layers of injustice faced by Native American populations during this period.
Heritage Weekend coming up on June 28th and 29th as members of the Vermont Abenaki tribes gather for the weekend at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. Throughout the weekend, there will be singing and drumming, traditional games, skilled artisans demonstrating their craft techniques, wampum readings, cooking demonstrations, and sharing a heritage that extends from past centuries to present day. It's the Abenaki Heritage Weekend, rain or shine, at the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum, located just west of...
It's not a fair situation.
Is this you discussing Indian blood? We're going to judge people by whether they have Indian blood, whether they're qualified to run a gaming casino or not?
That probably is me, absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, if you look at some of the reservations that you've approved, you, sir, in your great wisdom have approved, I will tell you right now, they don't look like Indians to me. And they don't look like the Indians. Now, maybe we say politically correct or not politically correct. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians. And a lot of people are laughing at it, and you're telling how tough it is, how rough it is to get approved. Well, you go up to Connecticut, and you look. They don't look like Indians to me, and they don't look like Indians to Indians. And a lot of people are laughing at it.
A lot of people are going to be mad, and I can't even say that I'm a fan of Trump, but I'm a fan of the truth. And what I can tell you as someone who is 95% Native, that when it comes to getting your tribal registry and your certificate of Indian blood, you have to prove records. But the challenge for people that actually do have red skin or that are really red bone is that to be recognized as Indigenous, they don't care about DNA or blood tests. They're going by the Dawes records, and a lot of Dawes rolls were destroyed, especially rolls of true Native Indigenous. Thank God my family just happens to be a part of the original Chickasaw tribe. So we have a museum. My great-great aunt, Mary Tayetta Thompson, there's a movie about her. Frank Thompson, which was her father or grandfather, is the same as, he's my great-great-grandfather. However, half of her family, because they were born a little darker skin color, they were kicked out of the reservation and misclassified and left a trail of tears. And they were classified as free men and then Negro and then later African American or Black. So if it weren't for the fact that my family actually are who they are, who would have known? I would have been one of the many Native American people that would have been out here with completely no history, no proof, no record, because DNA, they don't care. So a lot of these $5 Indians are mad because they know they're really not Native. But the ones that really are, I'm telling y'all, it's our time. What is a certificate of degree of Indian blood, and how do you research your indigenous history through the Dawes rolls and other resources? I'm about to put y'all up on game. Follow with me real quick. So it is a certificate by the Bureau of Indian Affairs where you have your requester date of birth, your father's name, your mother's name, if they're on a tribe, their roll number, and their parents' tribe roll number. So this is why it is so important when you are looking for your information that you know your grandmother's birthday, her death day, who her parents were, who is your great grandmother, who's your great grandfather, and who is their mother and father, and what day were they born, when's the actual date of birth, what state, and when did they die. One key thing to note about this document is that it is a certificate, like all certificates are. And it also specifies it is a degree of blood. And how do you constitute the degree of blood? Well, a natural person would think that it would be a DNA or a blood test. No, 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 no. They don't recognize your DNA. They want this certificate, this piece of paper, filled out with those names and that information. So most people have to rely on the Dawes rolls. Well, what is a Dawes rolls? Well, you got to go to the official oakhistory.org website to search the Dawes rolls between 1898 and 1914. The Dawes rolls are a U.S. government official, quote unquote, official list of natives who were accepted into the 5 civilized tribes. You know, civilized because they were such uncivilized people. Please note, though, that there were approximately between 10 to 100 million natives when they invaded Turtle Island, and about 1,000 tribes. They narrowed that number down to the 5 civilized tribes. Now there are actually 574 federally recognized tribes. And it's also key to note that the Dawes rolls stopped in 1907, and only a small number were accepted between 1912 and 1914. So they stopped it in 1907 and then started it again. That's hella suspect. Anyway, also, being that they narrowed it down to 5 tribes, please note that if you are from the Mississippi area, when it comes to this, especially Choctaw, ultimately, they did not even submit their information into the Dawes roll. I actually just did some research for a friend, and luckily they were like one of the 5 Choctaw people that were fortunately on the roll. So you put in the first name, the last name, and the tribal nation of the person. The problem that I found with this website, and by the way, Oklahoma and Choctaw means red people. That's a whole nother key giveaway of, Redskins. Anyway, although that name is derogatory, you think about the band that created that song, Redbone. Hey. Okay, anyway, I'm a little neurodivergent, but I'm still hanging on. So in Oklahoma, right, and doing this research, like I couldn't find any of my relatives. I did find another site. Now make sure you write the name of this site down. It's called Fold 3, Fold 3. So once you go to the Fold 3 website, this is what it looks like. Then you're going to scroll up to Native American, and you're going to hit on Native American, and you are then going to search for the name of your ancestor. And this gives more of an accurate account because it actually includes war registries as well as U.S. Census information. You know, the U.S. Census, which was created by another supremacist, Mr. Jefferson, who believed that Blacks were inferior to both whites in both physical and mental capacities, or as I quote, the endowments of both body and mind. Now, we know one thing about endowments when it comes to people of color, and I don't think that's a true statement. But anyway, so it has the census information, and you are more than likely to find your ancestry information on Fold 3. I had a lot of luck with Fold 3, and I was able to pull up the official documents, the interviews where they interviewed my great-great-grandfather on my dad's side, who's Cherokee. If you're Cherokee, by the way, the original rolls for the Cherokee Nation were the Henderson rolls. I'm a Henderson. Shout out to the Henderson Rolls. I'm native on both sides. I can't even make this up. But I found my great grandfather's interview of like when they were interviewing him, and it brought tears to my eyes because it was like literally these are these man's words, and he said like 5 times, "No, I'm Indian." And then they were asking him like, "How long have you been in the war?" He's like, "Since I was like a boy." And it was so sad because anyway, but it's just important to do this research and also note that when has a thief and a liar ever given back anything that they stole or been truthful? So the importance of knowing who you are is not a matter of asking asking for permission, right? That's why this information has been stolen and taken away from you, because they did not want you to know who you were. But once you know who you are, you don't need to ask the person who lied to you and stole you the truth, because the 1900s were not that long ago. We are still here and we still remember.
About ending birthright citizenship, how confident are you that the court will rule in your favor and allow that order to end birthright citizenship to go forward?
Well, you're just telling me that for the first time. I am so happy. I think the case has been so misunderstood. That case, birthright citizenship, is about slavery. If you look at the details of it, the signings of it, everything else, that case is all about slavery. And if you view it from that standpoint, people understand it. But for some reason, lawyers don't talk about it, the news doesn't talk about it. That's not about tourists coming in and touching a piece of sand and all of a sudden they're a citizenship. They're a citizen. That is all about slavery. And even look at the dates on which it was signed. It was right at that era, right after the Civil War. And if you look at it that way, the case is an easy case to win. And I hope the lawyers talk about birthright, citizenship, and slavery, because that's what it was all about. And it was it was meant to be positive. And they use it now instead, not for slavery, they use it for people that come into our country and they walk in and all of a sudden they become citizens and they pay a lot of money to different cartels and others. It's all about slavery, and if you look at it that way, we should win that case. Okay.
Very quickly, bringing up Black American descendants of slaves while trying to end birthright citizenship, saying that it was originally intended for Black American slaves and not immigrants, and the person who is saying this is someone who directly benefits from birthright citizenship. It is a very obvious attempt to triangulate immigrants and Black Americans against one another. This is another attempt to create division and cause chaos and discord to keep people fighting amongst another and distracted from what is actually the issue. Also, we are not the only country that has birthright citizenship. The vast majority of the countries in the Americas, including Canada and Mexico, have birthright citizenship, along with other countries in the Caribbean. A lot of these countries instituted birthright citizenship as they were getting their independence to entice European immigrants to come to their countries. This is the time, now more than ever, a lot of people need to develop their critical thinking skills, critical listening skills, and their discernment. If something you are reading or seeing is making you feel very strongly, it's eliciting a very strong emotional reactions from you. Before you respond, before you repost, before you tag, before you share, do your research. Look it up yourself.
They stole their land, then fought over who got rich from it. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians fought like hell to hold on to their land in North Carolina. But what if I told you the real battle came long after colonization? It came with casinos. In the 1990s, the Harrah's Casino brought millions to the tribe, but not without division. Some tribal members claim elders were silenced over land deals. Others say political elites took control while many on the Kuala boundary still live in poverty. Then came lawsuits, corruption rumors, and fights over who gets enrolled in the tribe, because if you're not enrolled, you don't get a cut. Now there's beef between the Eastern Band and the Catawba over a second casino just outside Charlotte. One tribe says it's their land, the other says it's theirs. The state? They're just counting tax revenue. In the end, it's a modern story of land, identity, and money. But no one wants to talk about it.
Imagine spending your whole life connected to a community and then being told your entire family were no longer recognized by them.
What is tribal disenrollment?
Disenrollment is the elimination of an indigenous person's citizenship in their tribe.
Why would anyone be disenrolled? Oh, casino money.
If we are a tribe of 1,000 and the number of members is reduced in half to 500, the remaining 500 tribal members just doubled their income.
It's over money.
They disenroll your ancestor, and everyone who comes behind them in the lineal descent is gone.
Disenrollment is the new genocide of Indian people.
There is nothing to protect Native Americans.
We need the people to stand up and fight.
A little takeover of the tribal office.
Is it true that you hired a militia to storm a casino?
Why are we doing this to each other?
I expect bloodshed.
Protests have turned violent.
We're going to continue fighting until we get back into our tribe. Yeah.
By disenrolling, they're saying you're no Indian.
Today we're going out to the Cherokee. Good morning, guys, here in beautiful North Carolina. And today we're going out to the Cherokee tribe. From what I've been told, much different than most other Native reservations in this country. For example, most young people receive hundreds of thousands of dollars in an account to be deployed when they turn 18 years old. It's out in the western part of the state. Very beautiful from the pictures I've seen. And we have the great fortune to meet up with a Cherokee local who said he can show us around, bring us in, and teach us about what's going on out there. Let's do this. We're in the heart of Cherokee right now.
Yes.
This is unlike any other reservation because it's not a reservation. It's called what?
It's a boundary.
So a native boundary.
Yeah. So we are a sovereign nation within inside the country, like a lot of other nations are.
Yeah.
But here we own the land outright.
Okay.
William Holland Thomas bought it back for us.
How many acres?
56,000 square acres.
When comparing to reservations, coming into Cherokee looks different than anything I've seen.
Oh yeah. If you're enrolled with the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, you get a per capita from the casino earnings. Half of it goes to, stuff for like hospitals or court system or, just stuff like that. And then the other half goes to the enrolled members of the tribe.
Every year?
Every 6 months.
Every 6 months.
So it comes in June and it comes in December.
Then how much do you have when you're 18 years old?
It just builds up. It depends. Like right now we can maybe make a lot of profit, and then next month we won't make that much. But say my daughter, when she turns 18, it was just steadily profit. She'll have more than, when they didn't make profit.
What do you think that number is roughly?
I say well over 500,000.
Wow.
Well over 500,000. But stipend up. Because
okay.
At 18, you don't want to be giving a kid $500,000 to do whatever they want, They're going to go right through it. At 18, they get 25% of it. And then 21, 25% of it. I think it's 23 or 25.
Okay.
The rest of it, you get it.
Okay.
But at 25, I didn't even know what I was doing.
You don't get benefits? You said you just got back from a 24-hour sweat.
Yeah, you don't sweat the whole time, though.
But it was a ceremony.
Yeah, it's rough. I have yet to come down from it. That's why.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming out today.
Of course, man. Like, I love showing people about my people.
Because how much sleep have you gotten in the last 48 hours?
You're like, hey, I got lost. And I was like, thank God I can take another 30-minute nap.
That's all I gotta say. It's so clean here.
Yeah.
It's so well taken care of.
And that's the tribe getting that casino money helps with stuff like this.
Right.
Like, they pay for the mowing and the workers and everything.
This is like the Bellevue of
exactly, yeah.
Native areas.
I take it for granted.
You take it for granted,
yeah.
But at least you're aware of that.
Exactly, yeah. I took a girlfriend at the time with me to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And she started crying. I was like, what's wrong? She goes, I didn't know what I had back home.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, yeah, of course. I was like, this is where I don't have any blood here except for my daughter, my siblings, and my father.
Wait. How come he doesn't have any blood there?
Wow. You've traveled a lot around the U.S.?
U.S., Canada, Europe.
So how do you feel when you come back to Cherokee?
You can take the boy out of the mountains, but you can't take the mountains out of the boy.
Is it your home?
Yeah, it's always home. I've just been practicing the language.
No.
No.
How does it sound?
Ga, ya, da, wa, da, he, do, ha. That says, I am visiting you. But actually, you visiting me would be...
In what
wa, da, wa,
language?
da, he, do, ha. You are visiting me.
How many Cherokee speakers exist out here?
Less than 150.
That's it right now. So you guys are really holding on to it. You're trying to bring it back.
You're darn right.
So the kids learning?
I'm teaching my coworkers, the ones that want to learn. Okay. Even the ones that said they didn't want to learn are learning because they're around it. Yeah. They hear me telling the other ones.
What's driving you to learn the language and bring it back?
It's us. If we don't have our language, who will we be? Our language is what defines the people. And if we can't speak our language, then can we really call ourselves Cherokee? We just turn into Americans.
Wow.
Did your parents teach you the language at all?
No, not really.
Okay.
They were actually kind of against it for a little bit because the things that my grandparents had to go through because they spoke it. While my dad was alive, he made mention of one time when I asked him why he didn't know it, why he couldn't teach me.
Sure.
He said he didn't want to get locked in a closet, get beat on for speaking.
Right.
So, well, I told him, I said, well, Dad, ain't nobody gonna do that to you now.
Wow. Wow. Let's just give me a second. Let me process that.
So I came across an interesting article. The name of the article is called Excluding Indians, and it reads, Trump admin questions Native Americans' birthright citizenship in court. Native Americans. He's questioning whether Native Americans have the right to be in America. In the Trump administration's arguments defending his order to suspend birthright citizenship, the Justice Department called into question the citizenship of Native Americans born in the United States under the 14th Amendment, citing 19th century law that excluded Native Americans from birthright citizenship. And then it goes on to say, under the plain terms of the clause, birth in the United States does not by itself entitle a person to citizenship. The person must also be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, the filing said. And then this is where it gets juicy. It says, the Trump administration then goes on to argue that the 14th Amendment's language, the phrase subject to the jurisdiction thereof, is best understood to exclude the same individuals who were excluded by the act, i.e., those who are subject to any foreign power and Indians not taxed. And this is already happening, unfortunately. In the Navajo Nation, they have already had some of their members that were detained for immigration reasons. Luckily, they didn't get sent back to where they came from. How does that even work? So anyways, they're now advising, basically, if you have brown skin, you need to carry something with you to show that this is where we're at right now. This is really where we're at. Make sure you have your papers on you. I don't know what else to say. I just said those words out loud. I just said, make sure you have your papers on you. In America.
In here, U.S. citizen?
We're first ones.
We're Native American. We're the first ones.
Oh, perfect. Perfect, huh? What are you? What are you? Are you an American citizen? No, you're not. You're not a firstborn. You're not from this land. And neither are you. Not from this fucking land. Got you on live.
Go to the border.
And your skin is brown as ours, fucker. We didn't cross the border crossed us. Get the fuck out of here. Fucking three of you fuckers. Fucking my son died and this is what you do? Fucking punk ass bitches.
Native Americans who are more American than you and I for no other reason other than complete and utter bigotry. That's what this is. Let me tell you what's going on. Reports of Navajo people being detained in immigration sweeps sparks concern from tribal leaders. The Department of Justice, under Trump, argued in court that indigenous people don't have birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment, so neither should children of non-citizens born in the U.S. Think about that. They're arguing that Native Americans whose land we stole by raping, pillaging, kidnapping, and murdering, they're not rightful American citizens. As U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement intensifies its effort to apprehend and deport undocumented immigrants throughout the country, we saw massive raids in Chicago, in particular over the weekend, concerns rising among indigenous communities residing in urban areas about reports of indigenous people being detained in the valley. Navajo tribal leaders have received alarming reports that their tribal members are being detained, heightening uncertainties over the implications of these actions have for their communities and the safety of their people. Quote, "We now know that Navajo people and enrolled members of other tribes are being detained in Phoenix and other cities by ICE," Navajo Nation Council Speaker Crystalline Curley said during a committee meeting on Thursday. "The reports that we have received indicate that we need to coordinate an operation or some type of response to help our enrolled tribal members here on Navajo Nation." But wait a minute, MAGA. I thought that this was about going after criminals. I thought this was about going after the people bringing in fentanyl. I thought this was about going after the people that murdered Laken Riley. I thought that this was about going after the bad ones, as Trump said. They're not bringing their best. What does going after Native Americans have to do with keeping America safe? Absolutely nothing. And I don't give a shit if you want to subscribe. If you want to unsubscribe, because I'm not going to feed you exactly what you want to hear, bye-bye. Go back to your safe, comfy right-wing chambers. This is bigotry. This is hatred. And this is literally what fascism is.
Name?
Frank Fence Post.
Address?
Where do I live?
Yeah, where do you live?
I live where the land meets the sky, where the eagle and the raven fly free. I live under the sun and the moon.
Where do you live?
I'm his neighbor.
A lot of people ask me this question, whether I'm Native American, whether I'm Mexican indigenous, or I'm Mexican Spanish. And that's because I don't have a lot of hair on my body. In fact, any native to America, whether it be South America, Central America, or North America, if you were a native indigenous person, you didn't have much hair on your body. But then I have lighter colored eyes, so it's like, am I one or the other? And the simple answer is, I'm Mexican American. Both of my parents are Mexican, and I was born here in America, so I'm Mexican American. But you know what, when you really think about it, I could even say that I'm Native American, because the fact is that many of the countries in Southwest United States used to belong to Mexico and be Mexican territory. California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, all used to be Mexico, and the people that lived there were Mexican. And yes, this includes Native Americans that used to live there. Also parts of Colorado, parts of Wyoming, parts of Kansas, and even Oklahoma used to belong to Mexico. And some of these Native Americans were in Mexico at that time. These territories were in fact part of Mexico before the mid-19th century. So it's crazy to think that some Native Americans could have been considered Mexican Native Americans at some point in time. This is a very interesting topic. So I'm glad you brought this up.
Mexicans are Native American from North America. We're from California, down to Texas, all the way down to South Mexico, and the states in between here. This used to be Mexico, and our DNA is still in this land. I took an ancestry DNA test, and these were my results. I'm 40% indigenous. I've done a video about this before, but people still don't get it. Majority of us Mexicans, this is where our DNA comes from. I already knew this, it's common sense. Our ancestors come from this side of the world, but some people get offended when we say that. They're like, no, no, you can't be native. You're Spanish. And some of us are mixed with Spanish. Some of us are not. Some of us have a higher percentage of indigenous blood versus Spanish blood. It doesn't mean that we're not native. Our ancestors were native to this land. All this land right here. So yeah, when they say to go home, we are home. Can you show me your DNA test? Let me see where your DNA is found around the world. I bet you 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, it's not over here.
Did you know that about 10% of Mexicans still speak a Native American language? Since colonialism began in 1492, most of the tribes of the nation have lost their ability to speak their mother tongue. However, 1/10 of the country can still converse in their tribal language. 10% may seem like a small number, but when you factor in the total population of Mexico at almost 130 million citizens, this indicates that almost 13 million Mexicans can speak a Native American language. This statistic is quite impressive when you take into account the fact that there is roughly 3 million natives in the USA and 2 million in Canada. That means that more Mexicans can speak an indigenous language than their 2 northern neighbors combined. These languages vary from Nahuatl, Yucatec Maya, Mixteco, Zapoteco, Otomi, and many, many more. The reason for this wide array of languages is because of the fact that Mexico currently has somewhere between 62 and 68 Native American tribes across its territory. Unfortunately though, many in our younger generation are losing their ability to speak their ancestral tongue, and for this reason it is imperative that we preserve our language in order to maintain our heritage for centuries to come.
Here's something bold I want to say to all the Latinos and South American people. They're going to say you're part of the Spaniard people, right? The truth is no. Spain conquered that section of the land. Isn't it really weird that the definitions of South America, let's talk about that, have been changed, okay? You are Native American Indian, too. Native American Indian. And I'll tell you why. North and South America. You're still on a continent of that America. You are South American Indian. Let's just say it that way, from all the way down. But Mexican. The Latinos there. You're North American. North American. They divided you with class and definitions because of a country. Mezzo, what did they call it before? But they're basically like Mati of the Cree. It's like half-bred. A lot of places, right? That's what it is. But you are also South Americans. I'm going to tell you something. You are South American Indians. Natives. South American natives. The same people of us. Right across the whole fucking country. Down. Don't let the white man divide you by continent just because they decided to, because of colonization and the powers that be, because of municipal governments and fucking crowns. Fuck those sons of bitches. Mexicans, Latinos, you are Native American Indian. Just because of those divisions of countries and terminologies does not define who the fuck you are. Hi, have a good day.
I'm more of your unknown warrior.
Mexicans claiming to be Native American, I gotta say that's a new one to me. There's no such thing as an ancient Latino. You know why? Because you're not indigenous nor native to this land, to the Americas. You are a product of Spaniard colonization. That's what you're a product of. The writing is on the wall. You go dig up some artifacts in the Americas. Nothing's going to resemble you. Because you're just you're a new people. You're a new people. Yeah. The people that's the descendants of the real indigenous people in Mexico, you do not look like. They're not white skinned. They're not light skinned. And their feature is not European features. Hell, some of y'all are direct descendants of Spaniards that never left. Like when Spain got beat, y'all stayed there. But anyway, I'm going to leave y'all with this.
Mexico was dominated by the Spaniards. The only reason I look the way I look is because I'm 65% Spaniard. Yeah. Because I'm 65% Spaniard.
Y'all are simply just mixed. European and indigenous are just straight up European. And we know how the indigenous got there, right? We know how the European got there, right?
Was exactly what I needed.
It was therapy.
It was therapy. It was a form of therapy.
There were no Indians here when Christopher Columbus got here. There were people from Africa who had been here for over 10,000 years before Christopher Columbus was born. It's time for us to teach our children the truth.
Where did Crazy Eyes Columbus think he landed when he got to the New World? For most accounts, it says that he thought he landed in India and that he had found a new route for the spice trade. However, India did not exist at this time, and the Indies, which is a portion of Southern Asia, Southeast Asia to be specific, that makes up Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, etc. He thought he had landed in this region. As you can see from this map, it does include India, but at that time, it wouldn't have been called India. And when he got there, he wrote back to Spain saying he had made landfall and he had navigated all the way to the shores of Asia. And even during that time period, they quickly figured out that he was mistaken. So everybody knew that he was wrong for calling the indigenous people Indians. But you know, he was Columbus and they kind of let him get away with stuff until they threw him in jail for crimes against humanity. But we'll get back to this one because we should normalize this picture of Columbus instead of this one with his crazy big eyes. So Columbus thought he had made it to India or the East Indies for Southeast Asia. And they wanted an easy way to have trade and travel because there was a lot of riches in this area at the time. The spice trade was going on. There's a lot of new goods coming in and out. And he was really excited about being like, wrong. Stubborn too, I guess. Because even once everybody realized that he was in the wrong place, he kept insisting that it wasn't. Probably even the indigenous people too. Probably like, who are you? What are you doing here? He kept insisting that he was correct. Until, of course, they credited him with discovering the New World. But you can't really discover something that already has people living in it. That'd be like walking into somebody's house or somebody's car that's already occupied and saying, this is mine now. That stuff will get you arrested. Like this. But to clarify, Columbus got lost, did not exactly think he landed in India, the country, but the Indies. He was still very, very wrong. And the history that most students are taught about this man is completely inaccurate. So I'm gonna let this peer into your soul for a little bit. Enjoy.
Everybody want to be American. Lord have mercy. Let's read this. A native of America originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper color races found here by the Europeans. But what? But now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Baby, the fact that you think you remotely as brown as copper is just hilarious. Please stop making me laugh. Like, you think you look like her? This is the Copper Romance magazine, baby, in the 60s, baby. You think you look like us? Who want to be copper all of a sudden? Who want to be aboriginals all of a sudden? Yeah, all right. Let's take a look at this definition one more again.
I've been trying to tell these copper-colored clown-ass Negroes. Ain't no such thing as no goddamn Timerican. Where the fuck we get that shit from? The ignorance level is sky high with these Negroes. We're Timericans. We're copper-color. What the fuck is the copper-colored nation at? The copper-colored kingdom. Where is the Timerican kingdom of America? You niggas be lying. And right now we got so much shit going on in the world, but you copper-colored Negroes like to hold on to this dumb shit, making us all look bad.
I tan better because I'm part Native American. I've heard this phrase in my childhood and adulthood. It reminds me of this picture right here. There's a dark history connected to this phrase. And I think it might be connected to why some Black Americans think that we aren't the real Native Americans. It reminds me of the phrase, kill the Indian to save the man. A period of time where they wanted to assimilate us into a white society. It's also the reason I don't subscribe to colorism. Because this was my color around I think I was 10 years old in this picture. Native people come in all different colors. Me, I just wear a lot more sunscreen and I don't go outside as much as this 10-year-old person. This difference is exactly why non-Native people see us closer to whiteness because they think we can achieve it. But That's just a colonizer point of view. And because we're closer to whiteness, they think they can achieve what we can. They think they are us. But at the end of the day, they're not like us.
We talk about slavery in America, we focus on Europeans that brought enslaved Africans here. But what about Native Americans? What were they doing while this was going on? The answer is complicated. Let's talk about it. Before European settlers started enslaving Africans, they tried to enslave Native Americans first, but it didn't work out the way they planned. Native Americans knew the land way too well, so obviously they escaped all the time. They had strong community ties. Other tribes would hide and protect them, and they fought back hard. So colonizers turned to the transatlantic slave trade instead. But here's where it gets interesting. Some native tribes, they actually helped enslaved Black people escape. The Seminoles in Florida, they took in runaway slaves and lived together as allies. The Underground Railroad didn't just go north. Some runaways escaped west to native lands. There were even Black native communities, like the Black Seminoles who fought against slavery together. White settlers hated this, of course. They launched wars just to break up these alliances. But here's the part they don't like to talk about. Some native tribes, especially in the Southeast, owned enslaved Black people. The Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, and even some of the Seminoles had plantations with enslaved Africans. They passed laws keeping Black folks enslaved, just like the white settlers did. But after the Civil War, some of those tribes, they still refused to free Black people until they were actually forced by the U.S. government. Why? Because they saw the U.S. rewarded white slave owners. They got power, they got land, and some thought mimicking them would help them survive. Native Americans weren't just bystanders during slavery. Some were oppressed right along with Black people. Some were allies in the fight for freedom. And yeah, some actually participated in slavery. History is messy. People make choices based on survival. But the truth? Black and Native struggles are deeply connected. And understanding those connections helps us fight the same systems today. They don't teach you this in school for a reason. But now you know. What are you going to do with that knowledge?
So who are the Native Americans? We saw last time several shocking things that genetics has recently revealed. And this comes from a paper that was just published April of 2020, work I've been doing in collaboration with others. We've seen that the Native Americans today are not the first Americans. They arrived in the early AD era, somewhere between 250 AD and maybe 800 AD, from Central Asia. They came over, either mixed or perhaps wiped out whoever was here first. And this shock raises all sorts of other questions that we're now trying to uncover the answers to. Why did they leave Central Asia? What pushed them out? Why would they leave their homelands, make the dangerous trek across the Bering Strait to a land that's foreign, and engage people and overtake them? What did they do once they arrived here? What's their story besides just they came here and the rest is history? And of course, it raises the question of who were the people who were here first? Who did they come from?
As a matter of fact, we no longer go by African American. We can't be too.
That's why when I see all these American Africans with this whole I'm a Native American, again, just like with the Hebrew, you may have some Native American blood. My grandmother, her grandmother or great grandmother was Native American. And if you saw my grandmother, you could see it. You know what I mean? But that don't stop you from being African, because once again, you got 64 greats. Okay, so if you got 2 natives, you got a few Hebrews, you got a few Caucasians, most of them are still going to be African. So how y'all getting off talking about you never came from Africa and you look just like an African? The only people in the world who look like Africans are Africans. Okay, but you got this, but here we go again, that self-hate. I don't want to be Black, so let me try to call myself this, call myself that. I'm indigenous, I'm Aboriginal. Well, first of all, both of those words came from white men, and neither word is older than the word Africa. So what are we talking about here? We always trying to run away from who we are. And my thing to people like the Honorable Marcus Garvey said, you can't name yourself out of oppression. You can't philosophize yourself out of oppression. You got to struggle and work your way out of oppression. They think if I call myself a Native American, your problems are going to be gone. No, they're not, because white folks know who you are. Everybody knows who you are, but you.
But Pocahontas was not black.
Pocahontas wasn't black. Yes, do a
This question is for all black Americans that think black people are indigenous to the North American continent and Africa had nothing to do with it. I got a question for you. Where is your culture? What a lot of you don't understand when you deny slavery ever happened is that we usually can tell the migration of a people group by tracking down their culture, their linguistics, architecture and art. So, while looking at the culture of African Americans, how they talk, how they worship, how they dance, how they sing, how they make food, let's look at all of that and ask ourselves, where is the indigenous culture that was passed down from the indigenous black people that was here before everybody else? And what I mean by that is, what do we find in black culture that is distinctly from them and not from the native Indians that you claim are not the true Americans, but also not found in Europe or Africa? What part of our culture, because you're saying that we were here for thousands of years before anyone else came. So what part of our culture, distinctly part of our culture, something that you would bring up and I'm like, wow, we all do that. What part of our culture is uniquely ours, but comes from the American continent? I wait your answer. And while you do that, I'm just going to list some things that are part of African culture that we actually do. We call sweet potatoes yams because in Africa we ate yams and we came here and said that they look the same and we just ate sweet potatoes and called them yams. You know how you have a lot of fried okra in the South? Oh yeah, okra is indigenous to the African continent. We brought that here. Also, watermelon, we brought that here. That's indigenous to the African continent going back 6,000 years. The thing that y'all leave out in your little narrative that African Americans are indigenous to America is that they didn't only bring people, they brought our foods with them. Kendrick Lamar has a song called They Not Like Us. The proper English way of saying that is they are not like us. However, when the African enslaved people that were brought here were speaking in English, they didn't have in their native tongue a plural version of the word is, which would be are. That is why many African Americans skip over the word are when we're talking about things. So the correct way to say it in an African American vernacular would be they is not like us, or just skip it all together and say they not like us. Y'all is literally speaking English with an African accent and saying you're not from Africa. It blows my mind.
I'll never understand the black people who are trying to convince me that I'm a Native American. Why don't you all just go find your people? Like go to Wyoming or, like go to Montana. You're free. You can, since we're not the same, you can just go find your crowd. We, the descendants of slavery in America, who came against our will on ships, we wish you well. If we're not the same, I get it, but we definitely came on ships. So find your people. But, I talk to people who say, well, I can trace my family, we were Native Americans, and you got the same nose I got, right? But there are reasons, there are explanations. So first of all, it is true, you can go back to the 1600s. We know it is well documented that there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, even just in Virginia alone, of runaway slaves who, oh, I thought this dog was going to attack me. Runaway slaves who ran to these indigenous tribes. There was cooperation, right? So this is before Bacon's Rebellion. After that, the government tries to force division between these two groups. But it's very possible that your family got mixed in that way. The first runaway slaves were not in 1850. People from the very beginning, the very early colonial period, were running away. And some of those runaways found themselves in swamps, in the backwoods. And that's how they got free and stayed free. They stayed off the radar. Again, this is as early as the 1600s. So, yeah, it's very possible that your family traces there and you don't really find a connection to slavery because they were hiding out in the swamps for a long time. So there are explanations for these things. you just can't get around what is documented in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, there's another way that your family may have gotten involved. A lot of those tribes practiced black slavery. So if you say my family was with the Cherokees, yes, because they were probably enslaved. Not sure why you're really clamoring to claim that, but go off. It is what it is.
Why does every African American I know believe that their grandmother had high cheekbones and straight black hair?
I think it's probably a desire to be associated with people who are portrayed in popular culture as fierce warriors and who resisted the United States. And if you're a slave or an African American living in Jim Crow America, who wouldn't want to be associated with someone like Crazy Horse or Geronimo?
It's easier to say, we got a little Indian.
So you make up a myth.
You make up the myth. It sounds much better.
It sounds much
goes
better.
down a lot smoother.
There's a strange sense of security in not knowing a great deal. There's a sense that it's all sort of mystical and lost, and nobody ever find it, so you could sort of invent any past you wanted to. Well, you can't do that now.
The people who believe in white supremacy the most are black people. I don't mean all black people. I mean specifically the black people who don't believe in the transatlantic slave trade, who believe that they're Native Americans. They look at all the overwhelming documentation and evidence over centuries around the world, and this all-powerful white man somehow orchestrated all this. From documents from insurance companies, from documents from slave trading companies, from diaries of slave traders, diaries of the enslaved, narratives of people who survived. All of that, this all-powerful white man, this white man more powerful than every deity ever created. And I just don't believe in that type of all-powerful white man, so I can't really get down with y'all.
The history and the science that man originated in Africa?
Oh, absolutely. It's indisputable. And it's interesting that you bring that up because right now in America, we have a ridiculous dialogue going on because there's some reactionary self-hating Africans who are trying to convince other American Africans that they don't come from Africa, that they were already in America. They're positing that America, the American continent, was a cradle of civilization. Mind you, no scientific research at all backs this theory up. Okay.
Even Europeans can't dispute.
It's indisputable. The Chinese just came out last month. One of the top geneticists in China who now stated that their first ancestor in China was an African, and every Chinese carries the DNA. The East Indians have already done this. Mexicans have done it.
Just in case you were wondering, I'm still not sorry. I'm not sorry I offended you. I'm not sorry I triggered you. I'm not sorry I hurt your feelings. Hey, just in
No, they have two languages. Thai language. Language. I want to learn and to go.
Mexico recognized its third root years ago as West African. This is very true. Spanish brought West Africans to Mexico and enslaved them in Mexico. Well, it was called New Spain at the time, since colonialism. So during that time, there was more West Africans in Mexico than Spaniards. And so it's really important to understand that Mexican culture, especially after colonialism, is very deeply Spanish, Indigenous, and West Africans, the three roots of Mexico. And so when you look at the whole culture, especially during colonialism, it is very much West African, and it is also very Indigenous, and it is also very Spanish. People need to understand that even the government has acknowledged its West African lineage, and there's even a census that recognizes West African or Afrodescendientes within Mexican culture or population. This is self-identified, obviously, but there are a lot of Mexicans who have African ancestry and probably don't know it or do not have the phenotype, but they do have the cultural lineage and they have the cultural legacy too. And even if Mexican people do not have African lineage, it is important to understand that they have the cultural lineage, that they benefit from the African culture that was brought to Mexico. And so it is important to recognize the third root.
Este es el combo que no se deja nunca. La mente me daña y le gusta la cizaña. Mami, si te envuelve yo te voy a meter caña. Este es el combo que no se deja nunca. La mente me daña y le gusta la cizaña. Mami, si te envuelve yo.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
So you mean to tell me the people in the diaspora who look the most like the African American, you have nothing to do with Africa genetically? It's ridiculous. But we have to look at the mentality behind that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be on a losing team.
True.
And until African people start winning globally, nobody wants to be a part of us. Yeah. This is why you have Spanish-speaking Africans in the Caribbean who will call themselves Latino or Hispanic. They're Africans, but who wants to be part of a losing team? It's just like when you go throughout Africa, it's not, I still run across Africans who will tell you, I'm French, I'm British, you understand? Because nobody wants to be part of a losing team.
Yeah.
But the minute African people get our situation back in order, everybody who don't want to be black will proudly return to the race. We have to give them something to be proud of. The Honorable Marcus Garvey said, the white man has made being black a curse. I'm going to make being black a blessing. He said we have to sell being African back to the African.
Get into the video.
The culture. I knew that I had some
See this
in me from looking at my grandmother.
First of all, no, she not. Like my sister said, she got those feathers off Amazon for $70, and that is complete up and down cultural appropriation. Second of all, this is what happens when you spend time arguing with a person, me, speaking up for your community, you, about religion. It opens up the door for people like her and others just like her to appropriate y'all culture. So I did a deep dive. I got some pretty good software. I've been kind of a closeted nerd, never really wanted anybody to know that. But it took me about a day and a half to make this video because I wanted to make sure I had everything together. Did a deep dive. She's behind 5 pages that perpetuate that online argument that Black Americans are the real natives and that today's Native Americans are the pretenders. Somehow they trying to mix the history up or swing it back around or, mess it up or something like that. I don't know how they doing it, but if she was behind 5 pages, don't worry, I got them all removed. You're welcome. Know your history. And as far as her getting on here saying that she's been seeing entities, that's your ancestors. They didn't go through what they went through on them boats and in chains for you to get on here with somebody else's, not even doing it right, appropriating somebody else's culture, acting like they didn't exist. Like my sister told you. Since you didn't listen to her, you ain't got no choice but to listen to me. Know who you are, acknowledge your ancestors, and stop getting on here playing games, because we gonna clock your teeth. There's people like me on here who have the specific software to do it. Part 2 coming next.
This thing that I'm wearing
is tacky. That thing that he's wearing is cheap. That thing that he's wearing is a disgrace. That thing he's wearing is molting, because why are the feathers so far apart? And also that thing he's wearing is available on Amazon for $74.99.
Now, another lesson, we're going to address the pretenders again because they're on my backup page and this one, so let's do it. When they say that they're the real Native Americans, they're the real indigenous Americans, which they're basically saying today's indigenous Americans are imposters, but they're still in their culture. So you say the way you can trip them up, which part? Ask them these 3 questions. What languages were spoken here? What tribes were here before colonization? Pronounce the one of them that starts with an N. I'm not going to do any more pronunciations for them to appropriate it. We know what I'm talking about, but they don't know what I'm talking about. Number 4, if you're indigenous American, well, which part are you indigenous to? Well, what do you mean by that? North America, Central America, South America? Wait a minute, what do you mean? They mean North America. They forget that Central and South America even exists. That's how you can trip them up. Those are just a couple of ways.
It's a green light on all fake ass Indians. You Siberians and Alaskans, you better run. This ain't your mother and we finna control, delete y'all and to show you them.
So IC3.gov is where we need to go, and this is an official channel to report these online scammers, you know, for the fake fraudulent tribes. Make sure you put a description and your information in there, but it takes strength in numbers, guys, and we need to make sure we're all on one accord to stop this indigenous identity fraud.
We know the truth now here. This morning I wake up and I find out I'm on the government watch list.
For them to now start ending up on like terror people watch list, because that's now what he's labeled as a terror person, domestic anyways. Do you know what you have to do to get on that list? And honestly, those rights that he cries around about so much, that he says he values and wants, those are now gone. You lose a lot of your rights when you become and get put on these lists.
Nothing tickles my bell more than to be tagged in an early morning video. It is now a federal crime to get on this app or any place in life and lie and say that you're Native American and you're not. You should have just took my damn advice. It was a kind gesture. Now your ass gonna go to jail. Pretendians. And pretendian is a term for anyone contributing to erasure. What is erasure? Pretending to be Native American to collect the benefits and all the accolades from it, and you know damn well you are not. Your ass is black, just like me and everybody else in the community that you come from. We have such a rich, beautiful culture. Whether you black Caribbean, black Asian, black Latino, black whatever, there's so many extents of black. Now we know there's blacks in the Native community, we know that, but they're not appropriating. You are. As I said on my other page, your ass is black, just like me. It's a damn shame the government gotta get involved to make your ass accept that. Take that and do what you will.
I was on a live with Port City 2 years ago, and he had his teammates, and I remember telling them, I said, look, we're gonna take our land back by force. And this is what he told me. He said, good luck with that. He said, they have an entire army. He said, God, they have an army, man. You can't take your land back. It's impossible. And he was telling me all this nonsense, him and all the goddamn friends, all this goddamn nonsense. There's no such thing as impossible. They took our land and we had everything. So you really think I can't take my shit back? We had everything.
One of the reasons you can tell that this black patriotism nonsense is just repackaged conservatism is that it requires you to be racist, to hold people within what you deem to be a racial category responsible for the sins of someone else within that racial category. This country had thousands of indigenous nations because it spans from the Atlantic to the Pacific. 5 of those indigenous nations in Oklahoma owned slaves. It is a historical wrong. It is a travesty of history. What does it have to do with the Buffalo Soldiers pushing people out of their homes in New Mexico, Texas, Cuba, and the Philippines? You're going to have to decide, do these arbitrary, pseudoscientific racial categories made to uphold the system of white supremacy have collective responsibility for each other, or do they not? And if it's okay for every other race to have collective punishment for a small part of their own history, but yours must be approached with respect and nuance, this is nothing new. You're just a racist.
Tartarian map and a modern day map and show how it is plausible
Oh
that
my
we can
God.
get to Africa through the Grand Canyon.
This is y'all, Pretendians.
Purposes only.
Listen to this.
Okay? So they showed a map.
This is how silly y'all got.
And how Africa is actually right across from California.
Oh my God.
On this old Tartarian map. So if you take that into consideration and that Africa is right there, And then they talked about how
Africa's right there at California. California's Africa.
90% of the Grand Canyon. And it made me wonder, like, what if it's because they don't want us knowing we can get to Africa through the Grand Canyon? Okay?
Really?
So then they started showing these canyons that are in, I believe, Iraq or whatever, or Iran, and they look very similar to the Grand
Oh
Canyons
my
here.
God.
And so imagine
5,000 views. Come on, y'all. Why would you even give this uneducated person that many views? Get out of here, man.
And for any jackass that logs in and says, well, where's the slave ships? How are we African descendants? I already told your ass, though a lot of that memorabilia was sold to other countries, okay? A lot of you motherfuckers don't even realize the Portuguese started slavery. They taught it to everybody else, all over Europe. You didn't know that, did you? Yeah, the Portuguese started enslaving Africans and, natives and everything else. They started that shit. Secondly, they practiced it in Europe on each other. Then they came and put our asses in chains. All over the place, wherever it was black and brown. That's the truth. So when you say, where's the ships? All over Europe. Take a trip every now and then. They got the slave shit up. They got all that shit still up. It's not in America because it was sold to the highest bidder, the same way they did our beautiful black ancestors. Treated them like memorabilia. Well, maybe less than that, considering what the hell they went through during the slave auctions. So I say to you, how can you in good conscience, in any conscience, get your black ass on this motherfucking app and say you ain't black? You ain't African descendant. Your ancestors, as I said, ought to rise up out of their grave, smack the shit out of you, and lay back down. Every time you say that dumb shit, they need to just rise up and smack the fucking taste out your mouth. Since when do you not want to be African descendant? Since when is that a disrespect? Your ass ought to have to go through the same shit your ancestors went through. They need to put your ass on a boat, make you take that same trip that your ancestors took, and wake your dumb ass up.
Why can't I leave these fake black Indians alone? The reason is they offend me greatly. And I've said this before, everybody gets that if you deny the Holocaust, Jewish people get offended. Why do you think I'm supposed to just be cool when you deny my people suffering? When you deny what happened to my folks? I'm never going to be okay with that. And that's why that other crowd, and maybe you have good intentions, who plays this, well, both can be true. Some of us was here and they brought some of us. That's like a woman saying, I'm living with a man and he beat me 10 times this month. And you say, well, I mean, he may have, beat you a couple times, but he didn't do all 10. No, take responsibility for every single one of them beatings. So we're not going to play this game again. We're trying to diminish and mitigate what happened to my people. I'm not playing that game with y'all. There are good reasons to believe that Africans explored the West before Columbus. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. But what does that mean, the West? Does that mean Virginia? There is zero evidence that Africans explored the United States of America. Maybe they did. We just don't have the evidence yet. There is no solid evidence of it. I'm open to it, but where's the evidence? But let's say they did. Let's say they came to Virginia and said, man, this is cool. Well, first of all, Africa has way more wealth, so I don't know why they'd be pressed to stay there. But let's just say they came here. There's zero evidence that they settled in the United States. There's just no evidence of African settlement in these United States. None. Let me repeat, none. I don't want to hear about they came before Columbus, Ivan Van Sertima. His work has not withstood peer review, even from black scholars. His conclusions have not stood up. That may hurt your feelings. They just haven't. Because you want to believe something doesn't make it true. You have to actually have evidence and establish something as real. So there's just zero evidence for that. There's none. So this whole idea that all these Africans are just walking around, if Native Americans or Europeans saw Africans, they would have said that. Like, they knew what Africans look like. And so when they get here, you can read every diary of a colonist, you can read every legal record. Not a one person says, I saw an African. I think they would have said they saw them. I think they knew what they looked like because they didn't see them. And so this makes no sense. This idea, well, there's just so many of us walking around Virginia when they got here. Well, let's look at the numbers. We're told that about 380,000, I think, were shipped to the United States. That's not a big number, right? Places like Brazil got 5 million. That's a whole lot more. But the last census before the Civil War in 1860, we have close to 4 million black slaves and 488,000 free blacks. Just take 2 seconds. This is basic math. To go from around 400,000 to 4 million slaves and 488,000 free blacks in over 200 years. Again, the first blacks come in 1619. We're talking about 1860. That's over 200 years. That's not a big stretch. It's just basic reproduction. And slaves were bred and bred very aggressively. That's not a really impressive number. So again, if all these Africans are walking around, that math ain't working, y'all. Sometimes the truth is ugly, but our resilience as a people is also beautiful. I don't need a fantasy story to make me feel better about being black. I really don't. I don't. I really don't need that. And I'm not sure why you need that. But I'm not going to let you diminish what my people suffer. I'm not going to let you deny that or take that away. I'm going to use that to build upon. And I think that's a way better strategy.
Degrade black people. Well, my melanated brown skinned people call we're not black, but let these folks tell it. They won't call us black because they give us all these bywords because they know it.
Okay, I have gone through several videos, like looking at different people's videos, reading comments, and this is what I've gathered from these people, these pretendians, okay? They're mostly uneducated. They're like, and I mean like, I don't know if some of them graduated high school uneducated. Like, they are definitely part of the 54% of Americans who read at a 6th grade level or below, uneducated. Okay? Now, there might be a few of them that are more educated, but those are the people that making money from the scam. Like this dude that they always like to quote. Bro, he taking advantage of y'all ignorance. Okay? He's just a scammer. I'm sorry. Y'all, it's disrespectful on multiple levels. One, because I know y'all don't know this, but there are still white folks in England who are getting reparations from the English government because of the transatlantic slave trade, because it ended. So they were trying to be like, oh, well, here's the money you would have made if we wouldn't have freed all those Negroes. That is still happening. You want to say the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen? Really? Everybody else, the rest of the diaspora, no. Okay? How do you think all those people of African descent got to Brazil? It has the largest concentration of people of African descent outside of Africa. And most of that is just, y'all are just hella ignorant and unwilling to challenge your own narrative. Because every time people will take a DNA test, they're like, oh, well, DNA tests, they don't always tell the truth. That's very convenient. That's very convenient for you. Okay? It's lots of, well, my elders told me that. Okay, a lot of us heard that from our grandparents. A lot of us. And me included. My grandpa also said that. But guess what? No native ancestry. None. Sorry. That's just the truth. And it is more likely that all of y'all have grandparents who either met their grandparent or great-grandparent, or saw a picture of them and saw that they were light-skinned and went to they must be native, because it's a much kinder explanation than, no, this person was a product of rape, which is actually the reality. Okay? Now, are there some black folks who have Native American ancestry? Yeah, but 1 or 2%. That's not enough for a grandparent. That's way back, okay? And most of y'all's ancestry is gonna be African. Okay? A lot of these people making videos, I'm like, bitch, I've seen a twin of yours on African TikTok. You have a twin on African TikTok. I've seen them. Okay? What the fuck you talking about? Like, it's so disrespectful. It's disrespectful to the whole diaspora. It's disrespectful to our ancestors who missed home, which is why they did everything they could to pass down as much cultural knowledge as they could to us. It's disrespectful to them. It's so disrespectful to Native American people. They had 99% of their people wiped out by Europeans. The same people that enslaved us. 99% of their population wiped out. They were able to hold on to a few of their cultural ties. And every time I see on Native TikTok, I see a little baby doing one of the dances, you know, like the little jingle jet. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad that there's more Native people being born, connecting with their heritage. Is beautiful. But then motherfuckers like you, with y'all uneducated, unwashed asses, want to come up and be like, no, we're the real natives. And it's gross. I also saw y'all during Mardi Gras writing that shit underneath videos of the New Orleans Indians. As if that's what that is about. No. See, again, uneducated. Y'all don't know. That tradition is specifically to honor the Native people that hid us when we ran from our enslavement. That is what that is for. It's to pay homage to the people that were already here who were like, yes, we will open up our homes and help y'all out. That is what that is about. But some of y'all so ignorant and want to take everything. Y'all don't care about the truth. Y'all just want to feel special. Y'all just want to feel different. It's also a weird ass excuse to be xenophobic towards Africans, as if they ain't our cousins. Like, are you serious? Are you serious? We even act like them. We do the same this. We do. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? It's so obvious that that is where we come from, West Africa. Now, where in West Africa? I don't know. I probably got dozens of West African tribes, because once we got over here, they didn't give a fuck. They were like, nah, y'all gotta breed together. Okay? It's just, it's disrespectful on so many levels. And let's be honest, it helps white supremacy. Because white folks would love if we would stop acknowledging the transatlantic slave trade. They would love it. And y'all running right into it because y'all refuse to challenge yourselves. Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting. It's embarrassing. It's shameful. And it just, like, I knew it was a fringe belief, but of course, because of the internet, all the idiots found each other.
Black people truly have no allies, and solidarity is really out the window in my mind for everyone under the POC umbrella. But especially when it comes to black people, it appears that we are just the can everybody wants to kick around. A Native woman came online and said that black people are settlers. We are the settlers under the settler colonialism.
Black Americans' claim of being the original indigenous people of this land was actually somewhat predicted in this article. There are differences between being oppressed and being a settler. If people are unable to distinguish between the two, then they think Black Americans, but also other settler immigrants. It is a fact that we are all affected by colonization, but by saying that we are all colonized, the implication is that no one is a settler, which can ignore the fact that some people of color can still be settlers on indigenous land.
You may be thinking to yourself, how does that make any sense? Because a native definitely knows that African Americans are a product of enslaved people. But she's tying it to all those pretendians who saying that they're the original inhabitants of this land. They're the original Indians. They're the natives of this land, even though that's not all of us. So to take a claim that's made by a small percentage of black people in this country and then say that all black people are settlers is really crazy. Settler colonialism is a logic and structure using colonial rule to overtake an environment and replace it with your own people and replace the indigenous people, which has happened here. Black people did not settle in America by choice. Anybody that has settled around the world under the imperialistic guise that happened during the Great Scramble for Africa, for China, India, Australia, and Americas, that was Europeans. We did not settle here. We were forced here by slavery, a system of slavery, one of the biggest migration of human bodies in human history. And we then spent hundreds of years here under forced labor, while at the same time, I can hold two truths. At the same time, your ancestors were killed, were taken out by biological warfare, your land was stolen, there were land grabs, you were forced into settlements, you were forced into containment areas. That is true, but we didn't do that. We didn't take your land over. If anything, the Malian kingdom definitely visited America hundreds of years before Europe. Scandinavians visited the America hundreds of years before Columbus. But the French, the Dutch, the English, they stayed. The Spanish, they stayed. This conversation is crazy. I feel like every day there's always something new that's coming up about Black Americans that people feel the need to use us to drive their point home. Two things can be true. This can be your land, you can be colonized, you can be displaced, and settlers took your land. I can be the product of colonialism by forced migration and slavery. Wow. Because the Pretendians are coming online saying that they're the natives, you're saying that we all are settlers. I've heard it all. I've heard it all.
Black Americans claim of being the original indigenous people of this land.
Disclaimer, this creator has apologized for claims made in this video about African Americans being settlers. But I do just want to make a point about some of the things I've been saying about how deeply rooted anti-Blackness can be. That opening statement that African Americans claim to be the indigenous people of this land is really interesting because if you are in African American spaces, if you know African American people, you know how much of a pariah the Pretendians are. You know exactly how much they are shunned. And even if you find one such person talking about being indigenous, you'll see the comments. And the comments are other African Americans being like, be for real, be serious, stop, 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 stop. It's this thing where I've said that Black people know how to hold our own accountable. We are in the comments, we're like, hey, please stop doing that. But for some reason, there's this pervasive idea that Black people are never held accountable for anything, which then encourages people to make these wide, sweeping, scathing statements about minority groups that are already being handled. The Pretendians are such a fringe of African American community and society that it would be strange to build up an entire argument against them and how they are systemically causing harm because they don't have even the numbers to do so. They're just people stuck in their own delusions, rooted also in extreme Afrophobia. So I just want to encourage people to be in community with Black people. You hear Black people already have a lot of critiques about ourselves first. And if you're not sure, instead of making bold statements, just ask or be like, hey guys, how common is this? People will be willing to tell you. And even in the follow-up, people are super understanding towards her and just totally forgiving of that original claim because they understand where she was coming from by discussing how, yes, even though African Americans are brought here forcefully, they still live on indigenous land that was stolen from indigenous people. That is very, very true. So we get that part, but they're not settlers. So this is your Saturday morning reminder to just get in community with Black people.
Black folks are not settlers. And the individual who mislabeled them as such cited, "Decolonization is not a metaphor," an article that I've read multiple times during my graduate program. And I'm here to clear a few things up. The authors make it explicitly clear that Black folks, the descendants of enslaved Africans, are not settlers. They were forcibly brought to these lands as chattel slaves, violently dislocated from their homeland, commodified, and positioned in this scheme of settler colonialism not as settlers, but as exploitative and punishable labor. Now, when we engage in these scholarly texts, it's really important to read them in their entirety before we cite them. Mislabeling black folks as settlers is harmful. It erases the profound violence of slavery, racial capitalism, and anti-blackness. It also causes harm to the conversations between black and native communities around solidarity and liberation. And so when you read these texts, do so with great care.
I don't know why they paired us up together.
Yeah. I know we have nothing in common.
We should find the people who did this.
And curse their families and watch as misfortune follows their bloodline for the next 7 generations.
Okay, I see it now.